Hey, everybody. Before we get you into this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey, we want to give a big shout out to our title sponsor, NHL Sense Arena, who were recently given access to the Meta Store. That has been something they have been trying to achieve for a long time. And right now, in your VR headset, if you go to the Meta Store, guess what's there? NHL Sense Arena. You no longer have to go to their website to download the game. We've said it many times on this show. We love what Sense Arena is able to provide for you, the listener, to your young hockey player in a VR way to experience the game like never before. And as you can imagine, now that they're on the Meta Store, things have changed a little bit. We are now offering 10% off an annual plan of NHL Sense Arena when you use the code, and you might want to write this one down, HNS-72A36D. Leave it to Facebook for an ad like that, HNS-72A36D, and that'll get you 10% off your annual plan of NHL Sense Arena on the Meta Store. But without any further ado, let's dive into this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey right now. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, powered by NHL Sense Arena. I'm Lee Elias with Mike Benelli and Christy Casciano Burns, and our guest today is someone that I guarantee every hockey fan in the world has wanted to meet and ask questions to. Sean Ellis is a vice president of hockey operations for the NHL and spends game nights managing the NHL Situation Room in Toronto. Yes, that Situation Room. In short, when you're watching a game and they say they're going to go check this out in Toronto, you can be assured they're talking about Ellis and his team. Sean is also an extra special guest for me today, as he and I both started our post-hockey playing work at the NHL headquarters in New York City just before 2010. Sean and I remember we had a mutual respect for each other immediately the day we met. 15 years later, I can still feel that today. I love seeing that we're both still heavily involved in the game. Sean, welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Hey, thanks so much, Lee. I'm really, really happy to be here.
Hey, we're happy to have you, man. This is kind of a little bit of the inside the NHL moment for everybody here. Yeah. I can hear our audience screaming, ask this, about this goal. But let's start where we usually start. Sean, you may work in Toronto, but you're an American, and usually that's the opposite on this show. So tell us about your hockey beginnings and how you got into the game.
Sure. Yeah. So I was born and raised in Springfield, Massachusetts. Played junior hockey in the Eastern Junior Hockey League. From 2000 to 2003, and then I went to was accepted to Amherst College, played my hockey there. When I graduated, I signed a minor league deal with the Corpus Christi Rays in the Central Hockey League. But after was put on waivers and decided to try to pack that in and go about finding my big boy job, my career. And through a series of fortunate events, I ended up getting an opportunity to work with the NHL in New York, as you said, and where we met and was there for 3 years. And after that point, I was transferred up to the Toronto office. And again, through another series of fortunate events, found my way into hockey. Fortunate events, it is that, but it's also hard work and dedication and doing the doing extra work, showing people your value. And so I don't want to say, I walked into a job. Like I think I earned my way into the job. And you have to earn your keep every day. So I think that pretty well sums up my journey to where I am today.
I'm still looking for my big boy job. Maybe one day I'll find that.
I think that's the magic. If you're still looking, then you're in the right place, right?
Right. Well, there's a quote I always say: "Don't grow up; it's a trap." Right. But one of the cool things, Sean, about working in hockey is I think we're afforded the opportunity to kind of think that way, even though it is work. But one of the things I remember about you, because if I'm not mistaken, I started just a few months before you did. It wasn't much, but your passion for the game was evident. I mean, we connected on that right away. You could just feel the love for the game. And it goes to show you, especially the listeners out there, that the passion and love for the game transcends playing heavily, right? And I'm not even just talking about playing. I should be talking about fandom too, right? That if you love this enough, whether you're a volunteer in the game or you actually work in the game, it transfers over pretty easily. So when you say a series of fortunate events, I'm going to echo what you also said. You worked hard. You wanted this. And the passion for the game, it hasn't died in me at all. I know it hasn't died in you at all. I just wanted to echo that because I think that's a really important part of the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely is. And I mean, I say this a lot too. Like, there are a lot of people that are passionate about the game, and know their various aspects of the game really well. But that doesn't mean you're well suited or would be well suited to work in hockey. Like, you need
Right.
that extra thing. And so it's really just like, I when I talk to people about this, I say that all the time, is like, when they're looking to get into sports, is like, you gotta know more than just the sport. You have to have the work ethic. You have to round yourself off really well, because it's not just gone are the days where you step off the ice and you just walk into a job in hockey. Um, but also, you can't just be super intelligent and walk your way into a job within the game. You have to be pretty well rounded, in my opinion. But at the base and the driving force of that, I think, does need to be a passion for the sport.
That's a great point.
Great.
You know,
I'm dying to know about the Situation Room. I just
Yeah,
gotta jump right in. That's the
yeah,
journalist in me. Tell me what that's like, the Situation Room. Oh
yeah.
my goodness. I can't
Well,
even imagine.
yeah, it's not lost on me how special it is. It's a fantastic group of guys that I'm fortunate to work with, and to be a part of that team that ultimately makes decisions on goals, on video reviews, high stick pucks, kick pucks, batted pucks. The coach's challenge for goalie interference, offside plays, missed game stoppage events. Like, to be part of that group of guys that gets to, like, really drill down in the details of those things, and then ultimately make a decision, is pretty special. The technology that we have in the room, I think, is a marvel. It's really allowed us to make decisions in a relatively short amount of time. I know for fans in the arena, it seems like an eternity, and at home, and you're often just sitting there waiting. Like, maybe initially you don't even know what we're looking at, but the technology that we have to get to those decisions pretty quickly is something to see. So we have a pretty good process. We have a good group of people with some great experience, that both in the NHL, as players, as coaches, as managers, and then people like myself coming through the game in a different route. You bring a different perspective, and knowledge of the rules, and so really, we're watching every single game in real time. We have somebody that's dedicated to that game specifically, or to a single game specifically, and then a group that oversees everything. So if there is an event that happens in one game, we move to that game too.
Wow.
So that one person is responsible for knowing the details. There won't be a person out there that knows that particular game, better than this one person. And so it really is a team effort. Like, you rely on that person doing that game to raise any issues and to identify any potential issues. And then we need the group of guys overseeing everything to work in concert with them, as well as the referees and linesmen on the ice, to come up with a decision on a play.
Y'all need to be well-oiled machines, obviously. I'm just curious
Absolutely.
about the technology. Is it more than cameras and just playbacks?
Yeah, so we have a system. Hawkeye is the software that we use. They're the company that does the tennis animation that you see in their tournaments. And they created a version of the software for us, specific for us, and it amalgamates 17 different views. So 15 of those would be unique. Yes, they would be unique cameras that are either positioned, say, on the blue lines, or we have 2 cameras in the crossbars of each net. So 4 cameras in the crossbars of the nets, another in-net camera, a camera over the net. And then we take the feeds from the home TV production and the away TV production, or the national TV production, and it amalgamates all into this program, and then it allows us to manipulate the video to go frame by frame, to zoom in, and to really get to again drill down to the details, and to the best of our ability make a decision on a play. So, and in concert with that, we have communication to the arena. So, as Lee was saying, when the referee puts on the headset, they're talking directly to us. And when they pick up the iPad, the video that they're seeing is being sent from us in Toronto to their iPad. So, we've, like you say, Christy, it is a very well-oiled machine at this point. And though not without its controversy, we don't necessarily feel that. We make our decisions what we think is based on fact and on what we can prove to be true. And sometimes I know that can be frustrating where you're sitting at home and you're saying, oh, that's clearly offside. And for us, we might have that instinct as well, but then we have to go the step further and say, can we prove that it's offside?
Wow.
And if you, Christy, Lee, or Mike were the general managers of that team, could I go up to you and say, see, this is why this is offside? And if there's any doubt in our minds, we won't do it. And I think it leaves there's a lot of plays where it's even a little bit frustrating for us where we don't get that clear enough detail that we need, or we feel that we need to make the decision. And you walk away from it feeling like, I'm 95% sure that that's offside, but we can't prove it.
Wow, even with all the different camera angles.
Well, and the guy in section 306 too thinks it's onside too. So.
Yeah, exactly.
And he saw it. He was there.
Yeah, he saw it, and I was just waiting for his message, and then we would have been able to make our decision.
The guy's always sitting next to me at every game.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, but
right.
I mean, my head just exploded when you explained all the technology involved, because I'm kind of like a techno geek here, but. I'm kind of surprised that even with all that, that you can once in a while still have a doubt, a question. Yeah. Really?
Yeah. I mean, like if you think about, you'll have to follow the steps here a little bit, but we have cameras that are directly on the blue lines. But as we all know, as players are entering the zone, they sort of stack up. They're trying to time their entry in. So when you're looking at it from the side, you might be trying to look through 3 or 4 bodies to see the puck.
Obstructed.
Okay.
And then we have one on the other side that can be obstructed as well. And then we have cameras in the scoreboards that shoot down, but there's an angle there, and it's the parallax. And so what may look like the puck is over the blue line isn't necessarily true. And we can't really use that as proof, because we know that angle can be deceiving.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, like if we go to goalie interference challenges, or maybe more appropriately, a puck over the goal line, like watching the game today, there are so many times where you see 6, 7, 8, 9 players in the crease just flailing around, and just to find the puck can be difficult.
Yeah.
Let alone then figuring out, did it fully cross the goal line?
Someday we're going to have camera chips in the skate blades and in the puck.
Yeah. And you know what? Yeah, you know what? And that's where we get the most flags. Like, why don't we have like a goal line technology? And we certainly have looked into it, and it's just not at a point where anybody's really comfortable that we would be able to say with a high degree of certainty that what we're seeing is, or what the data is showing you is true.
Wow.
The margin of error, I guess, to say is too great at this point.
Yeah.
So, I want to jump in here too, because this is something that I know from working in sports. So sports fans, and this is not a shot, tend to see about 3 or 4 inches in front of their face when it's, especially when it's their team. I always like to take a macro approach to things. And I got to say this, we're talking, Sean, most likely hundredths of an inch, tenths of an inch margin of error when you're watching for an offsides or a goal, right? Or you literally can't see it. Right. Now take a step back and watch an umpire have a ball go 6 inches outside the strike zone, which we can see, and call that a strike, right? So when you look at the other sports right now, and you look at the speed of hockey, it is so fast at the NHL level. I mean, I really sometimes don't think people realize how fast that game is moving. And then you compare it to the NFL, NBA, MLB. I'm biased, but I'm going to say it. Well, we have the best officials and officiating in sports. When you think about like I said, you're 95% sure, and you're talking about the smallest amount of room. That I don't think the other sports can say that. I mean, in basketball, we see blatant fouls called or not called. In the NFL, I don't know how many more rules they can make about catching a ball or hitting a quarterback, and then the interpretation of that. And this isn't a shot at the officiating in those sports. It's just different. And then baseball has its own sets of challenges. But when it comes to hockey, I mean, I think you guys get it right every time. I mean, and when it is one of those, we can't prove it. I think most people, unless it's, game 7 of a cup final, most people are nodding their head of like, okay, I can see why they would make that call.
Yeah.
But I got to shout that out, because when you have a margin of error that small, that's a blessing in a game that's moving faster than every other game that I just spoke about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And I think, I think we are always endeavoring to get as close to perfection as you can, but inherently in video review and what we do and what all the other major sports leagues do in their review process, it's an impossible thing to attain. However, the fans believe, and when something does go to review, it's black and white. There is a right and wrong answer. And it's unfortunately just not always the case. In many instances it is, but it's not always the case. But the expectation is that it always is. And that's where we catch a lot of our flack. And we don't have a problem with it. Like we have to make difficult decisions. And again, we know that we have to defend it. We're accountable for those decisions. And a fan at home isn't necessarily accountable. But if you, Lee, like you said, take your macro look at something, if you're looking at it objectively, and as fans, you can't always do that if your team's involved. And we love that. We love the passion of the fans. That's great. Hold our feet to the fire. We love that. But if you're looking at something purely objectively, I think more often than not, you can say, yeah, they made the right call there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
go ahead, Mike. I think the advent of this technology, right, has made it so much, I think, harder for officials, because everybody in the arena sees the play at a very slower motion than it happened. And it's easy to make a call like when it's going, 3/10 the speed, just tiny little fractions of a second. So let me ask you, because you mentioned that, the collaboration between the official on the ice that made the call and the situation room, how much influence does an official have back to the room when they're looking at that iPad with you? I mean, is there true collaboration there? Because we all know the officials are probably against one of the teams, right? So they don't want one of the teams to win. So I think so we have to know how much really say that they have in that process because they're boots on the ground.
Tremendous amount of say. I think the basis of the review is based off of their original call, and when we're reviewing it, we asked for their input. What were you seeing here, given their position on the ice, and what was your judgment? And it really, I can't stress it enough. It really is a collaboration. And I think more often than not, a referee picks up the iPad, and a lot of times when you get to a challenge, it's a team essentially questioning their judgment, right? They look at it and they say, oh, wow, you know what? I didn't see that from my view. So they're very quick to own up, and own up's maybe not the right way to put it, but to say when they had they're now seeing a piece of information that they didn't have when they made their original call. And they're happy to, at the end of the day, everybody wants to get it right. An official doesn't want to, walk away at the end of the game knowing that they messed something up. And
they're in the same boat, right, Sean? I mean, they're at the blue line making a call, and there's 4 6'4", 230-pound men skating by them, right? So how hard is it to make all these calls and worry about getting hit and worry about there's so much going on, where I think the video review is great when it's used if you're going to use it, go all in, right? I mean, I think that's where we are at the youth hockey level. It gets frustrating, right? Because parents think that everything's reviewable. I'm like, right. Just because it's on Live Barn doesn't mean it's reviewable. Like, there's no reviewable system. So the call is the call.
Thank goodness for that, by the way, Mike.
Oh, I know.
Every goal would be reviewed.
I can't tell you how many parents have come to me after games with the clip of the goal.
Did you see this? Did you see this?
Did you show the official this? I go, it doesn't even matter if I show the official that. I said, there's no youth hockey situation room in Colorado. It's just, it is what it is. So I think that's where we all have to, like, when we talk about this, Sean, all the time on the show, is there's such a stark difference between a professional official that has their life depending on it, really. I mean, their livelihood is this job, and the 13-year-old kid that's missing an offsides. That our expectations have to be like, listen, you have a situational room with 17 cameras, with sensors, with this, with collaboration. I have a 13-year-old kid that's getting yelled at by a bunch of adults. So I think it's just one of those things. To Lee's point, it's so great to see how these officials conduct themselves at the highest levels of the game, even with all that scrutiny there. And and most of the time it is right. I mean, whether you like it or not. Sometimes like, I can't believe they made that. I can't believe they got that call. Like, it was a good goal, but
that's a different story altogether. I was saying the other day, yesterday at my son's tryout, I was talking with another father, and he was saying, like, we lose all perspective the moment we walk into the rink of our kids' events. If it's a tryout or if it's a game or practice, like, all logic goes out the window. For some reason, it's just you enter into the twilight zone there, if you will. But our officials are great. The game, the speed at which it's played, as you guys were alluding to, it's inherently there are going to be mistakes made. But we're talking right now, it's the first round of the playoffs, and never is that more apparent than in the first round of the playoffs or in the playoffs in general. And never are our officials or us in the situation room more critiqued than we are right now. Inherently, mistakes are made on the ice. It happens. But it's not just by our officials. The players make mistakes. The coaches make mistakes. And yet the officials bear the brunt of that that anger and us when it comes to review. Though that being said, there are a number of individual players right now getting hammered pretty hard by the media for their lack of performance, if you will. So no one's escapes the criticism, but yeah, it's I think our officials do a tremendous job, and a little bit about the process. Like, before the coach's challenge was instituted, we spent probably a full year for sure, and maybe even a little bit more, tracking all plays that were goals that were scored where there was some sort of contact or traffic even around the crease, and all plays where a goal was scored and the entry into the zone was close. It was either clearly offside, or it was like really hard to tell, or there was some element of control. As you know, we allow for a player to enter the zone with control of the puck if and cross the blue line before the puck, which is unique for the NHL versus youth hockey. And so we looked at all of that, and the amount of times that our officials got it right was pretty surprising, even for us. They're so good at making these judgments in real time, and I can't give them enough credit for that. Again, mistakes happen. They're not going to be perfect, but the degree at which they do get it right was pretty surprising and eye-opening, I think. So really, when we get down to it, we're only ever really discussing, or we're most often discussing, judgment calls. And you can question the judgment of the officials, of us in the room. But the point of having the review system the way that we have it is that the same group of people make the decisions on all. So we might be wrong in your view on a play, but we're probably then going to be consistently wrong because we have the same people looking at it. We don't think it's wrong. We think it's right, but you get the point that we're consistent.
in your interpretation, right? I mean, that's like when you like. I think what's the most. I mean, what would be the most controversial one right now? It's probably. I mean, like that fine line of goalie interference, right? Like, is the goalie truly interfered with? Was the defenseman pushing the forward into the crease? Was the goalie even going to be able to make the save anyway? Like, and that's such a hard thing, right? Because now you see, like, you start seeing like a kid, like the kid from the Panthers, make that save the other day. Behind you, like, well, that's an impossible save. So it doesn't matter if somebody was, in his crease, but yet you have to make those calls. And I guess to your point, like once you kind of establish, it's like good officials, right? At the beginning of a game, once they've kind of established the game, like this is what I'm going to, like, it's just like an umpire with strike zones in theory. Like, okay, this is the strike zone. It might be a horrendous strike zone to the team. Yeah. But this is the strike zone we've
as long as it's consistent.
Right. And then the players have to play within that context.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. You as the player have to adjust to that set of circumstances for that game. I remember in college as a captain, before the after warm up, before you went back to the dressing room, you met with the referees at the referees crease, and they would tell you, I'm going to be real tight on hooks to the hands or whatever it was. And then you went back to your team and told them what was said. And then, you might not get along with that official. You might not agree with their standard. But your job as the player is to adjust to that and play within the bounds of that. It can get tricky if the standard switches over the course of the game, in your opinion, but the referees are doing the best that they can to uphold that standard and stick to that standard. And I think they do a really good job of it. Maybe, don't get enough credit, but that's the nature of the job, and that's what they sign up for, and again, to go back to like having the same group of people make these decisions, Mike, to your point about, youth hockey, like, you can come, as Christy, as you did, you can come with the live barn video and show, and it's like, sure, but you show it to Mike, and he might have one interpretation, Lee will have another, I might have a different one, and you don't want to have all these different standards floating around out there. And
exactly. But I slow-mo it and I zoom in, so my video is
so obvious.
But let's talk about youth hockey. You got two littles now. You have a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old, and the 4-year-old's about to really get into it. Your 9-year-old is already in the thick of it, and you've been to games, and you have to admit our local refs take a lot of heat, and parents in the stand can be super hostile. Name calling and the whole 9 yards. So let's. To put it gently, I won't talk about the fist fights that I've witnessed, but anyway. So it's tense, and like you said, it's almost like bizarro land when you step into that, and people kind of lose their common sense. So I would love for you to talk to parents direct. I mean, you're on the highest level of making these calls. Talk to parents directly about those dicey situations where they kind of lose control.
Yeah, I mean, again, I mentioned before, nobody, a player, coach, referee, wants to walk away from a game knowing that they made a bad mistake. They all are trying to do their best all the time. As Mike said, you might have a 13-year-old kid refereeing a game. Like, that kid doesn't want to mess up a call. He wants to get it right. Because maybe this is what he's interested in making his career. He wants to do the best, or she wants to do the best that they can do. And I think we would do well to maybe give them a little bit of deference, even as a 13-year-old young person starting off of their career. Give them the respect that they deserve. There aren't a lot of people signing up to do that job. And we don't really help our cause if we're so harsh with that kid, or even if it's an adult, we're so harsh with them. We're not encouraging more people to come in to do that job, and then therefore we're making, for the future, we're making it more difficult for ourselves. We're not going to have that competition amongst the officiating pool of people to get the best talent. We're just getting whoever's willing to sign up.
Yeah,
And
excellent points.
Yeah, I don't think that we're fair. We lose our objectivity. Logic goes out the window, and I get it. We're never more passionate about anything in our lives than our kids. And maybe I'm fortunate because of what I get to be part of, what I do for a living, that I feel I have a pretty strong sense of objectivity and perspective. And I wish, so I have to put that into practice every single day. And I carry that into the rink with me. I know where my kid stands in the pecking order, and it's okay. Like, we're not always victims, like sometimes your kids make mistakes. They're not always the superstar on the ice. Maybe they're never the superstar on the ice, and that's okay. But I think we would do better to continue focus on your kid and wish them all the success and hope that they continue to improve as the course of the season goes on, as the course of their careers go on. But know that your kid's not being held back because a 13-year-old referee made a tough call.
Now when your 9-year-old gets to be the age where they can ref, would you be okay with that? Would you encourage them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great career path. I mean, especially at the NHL level now, where our director of officiating, he's actively recruiting all the time. There's referee combines that they're looking for talent everywhere, and they'll approach people. They're not beholden to pulling people from a system. You have to work your way up through a minor hockey system to a junior hockey. Like, there's no, like, if they feel somebody could be a good referee or linesman, they'll go for it. They'll go after them. So we've had guys that are currently in the NHL that literally came off the ice as a player, and in the very next season were reffing at the professional level, not at the NHL, but at the professional level, having no other refereeing experience. We all know the rules. Players think, as a player, you think the rules really well. You don't, but or well enough, I should say. But you can learn that. But what's hard to teach an adult is how to skate and how to be able to read the game and understand positioning. Like, those things are sort of innate. So if they identify that within an individual, they'll be more than happy to work with them and try to encourage them and foster that talent to get them to the level. So if either of my sons or both want to do that at some point, yeah, absolutely, I'd encourage it. And I would hope that parents, when they're, at a game, can remember that that's somebody's son or daughter that they're yelling at. And even if it's an adult, that's somebody's father, husband, wife. It's all about perspective. And 9-year-old, my son's 9, he's going to be playing under 11. I think I have a pretty good perspective. We're not talking about the NHL here. We're talking about 9-10-year-old kids, and they still go to bed with their stuffies under their arms, and like
little referee plush. Yeah,
exactly. Like
little Kerry Fraser.
Sean, I wanted to say I have a ton of notes here, but when I coach, and this is something I'm speaking to all the coaches out there and the parents, and this is from pro down to mite. I have very low tolerance for my players speaking hostily to a referee, because A, I think it's far outside their control, but B, and Mike, you just brought up Kerry Fraser. He was on the show and really opened our eyes up to a few things. He talked about you cannot beat the opponent and the referees and win a game. You can't fight both of them. And I always remind my teams, the officials are a team too. There are 3 teams on the ice, right? And if you're yelling at them and ripping them, and parents, this is for you too, it's not going to work in your favor. One of the things I say when I work with teams, the hardest thing to do in team sports, in my opinion, in hockey, is to get a 60-minute mental and physical perfect effort. It's the hardest thing to do. Yet we expect that from every official from the age of 9 to 99, that they are Hawkeyeing everything all the time. and we're human beings. So do refs miss calls at the youth level? 100%. Do they daydream at the youth level? Most likely. I mean, it's not supposed to, but we're human, right? Yep. So I always try and remind players and parents that like you said, they're doing the best they can. They're a team too. Or I've had referees come up to me, say point blank, parents, you don't hear this. This kid with me today, it's his first game ever. And he's trying to learn. And he's going to do the best he can, which I encourage every official to tell the coach that, right? But he's going to make mistakes. It's a team. We're working with them to teach that kid to be a better official, right? Also, too, listen, I have a business idea. I wrote this down, guys. We're going to be millionaires on this. We need to create our own situation room for youth hockey. I have it down here. All we need is 60,000 volunteers to help us watch the games.
Oh my God.
But we'll have our own situation room. Yeah, no,
$6 million
tie it into my hockey rankings, and people could upload.
We're going to make this work, Sean. We need to borrow a few of those nets. I don't know if you have like 50,000 of them available with all of the cameras, but we can do this. We can review every goal, every stat. No, I'm bringing this up for the youth parents. I do want to talk about youth, and Sean, I do want to go back to the situation room at some point to talk about some of your other responsibilities. But I want to impress upon the listeners, parents especially, that I know you're watching the game, and I know you want your kids to win. But I want you to listen to what Sean says it takes to make the right call at the NHL level, which game is faster than your game. There are more people on the ice watching that game, and the players are the most talented at that game, and they still need all this technology, right, to do the best that they can. And thank goodness that we have that. Give these refs a break at the youth level. I think you said it right that they're trying to do the best they can. Look, sure, you're going to get ego in this game every once in a while. And my question to the kids, and this is another point I'm trying to make to the parents, whether I'm coaching or it's my kid, well, he missed that offsides call, right? The worst thing you can do is kind of continue to enable. Yeah, they did. They suck, and they ruined it. And the whole game now is ruined because of that offsides call. When the response really should be maybe yes, maybe no. What are we going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? How are you going to respond to this adversity that we're facing now? Because I can tell you right now, parents, there is no game and coaches won or lost on one bad call. It does not work that way. All right. It's unfortunate and you get bad breaks. Sean, I used to say, if you want to beat the refs, score more goals. Yeah. That's what I used to say to my players. Yeah. But you've got to be able to take the ego out of this a little bit. And I think that's how I'm going to round this out with you, Sean, in terms of this question is that from the situation room to the officials on the ice to the officials in youth hockey, you have to be able to remove the ego out of the situation to make a call. You can't look at it like, oh, I was a fan of this team. I'm not a fan of that team. I'm from this town. I'm trying to make – you have to remove that and just look at it black and white to the best of your ability. This is my judgment. This is my call, right? Yeah. That removal of ego is key.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think it is. And again, we are professionals. We don't want to go home at the end of the night thinking we did something inappropriate. We, as much as we might like or dislike individuals, teams, whatever, our goal is to get the call right. Our objective is to get the call right. And we're going to do that using the best judgment that we can to do so. We might, again, not get it right in your minds as fans, but we're working with the information that we have to get to that decision. I think that, you as fans, with all the different TV angles that they show, you're not working off of zero information. You have a lot of information too. And so if we went and did something completely off the wall, you would be able to see that, right? So we're accountable not just to the teams and the players and involved in the game. We're accountable to our fans. And you can hold our feet to the fire because you can see in many instances the same thing that we're seeing. We're just using our judgment, our experience, our knowledge of the rules, and more importantly, how those rules are applied to the game. And so, I think it's an important point to make. Like you're watching a game, watching your kid's game, you have a lot of the same information that referee on the ice has. They're just imparting their judgment. They have the ability to impart their judgment on the play and make a call that they make. When you get preoccupied with the missed offside call, to your point, you're not just playing the other team. You're not playing the officials too, and you've lost. You've lost the game at that point. If that's your concern, if you feel like a single call has ruined the game for you, I hate to tell you, but you lost the game well before that single call happened, right?
Right.
Well said.
And in fact,
well said.
yeah, and in fact, like, most often, overwhelmingly, it's a player's mistake that leads to a goal, that leads to a game being lost.
Right.
A coach's mistake, like a referee a linesman makes a tough offside call, a referee makes a tough penalty call. Like, what do you say when that happens? Like, well, we gotta kill this penalty, and then you move on, right? If you're so preoccupied about that one call, your perspective has been lost, and probably so too as the game.
Yeah, I've seen some crazy situations. One of the things that I think I've evolved as a parent and as a coach and a player, for that matter, is whether it's adult league or I'm on the bench, is no matter what I'm feeling, frustration, anger, is to kind of move that aside and really collaborate with the referee or the linesman on just tell me what you saw, tell me why you made that decision. I just recently had a situation. Actually, I was on a bench. And we felt the official made a poor call on it was a situation where the puck, in our opinion, clearly hit the crossbar, and they called it a goal, right? Mm-hmm. And it's very frustrating, okay? So the ref comes over, and we said very kindly, look, just tell us what you saw there, right? And he says, I believe I saw the puck go in the net. And we just said, okay, thank you. We didn't yell at him. We didn't say this, that. That's what he thinks he saw. Now, to this official's credit, and I will say this is very rare, after the game, he came up to us. He watched the footage. We had a little bit better footage than Live Barn for this one, Mike. And he said he came up to this. I couldn't believe it, Sean. He said, listen, that puck 100% hit the crossbar. I made the wrong call. And you know what? We shook his hand and we praised him for having the guts to come up to us and say, I made the wrong call.
Yeah.
All right. I've seen that a few times, right? But it proves your point, Sean, that they really want to get it right. He could have left the arena. Nothing would have happened. Nothing. We would have never thought about it again. He went out of his way to come up to us and say that. I've had refs come up to me on the ice and shake. I made the wrong call there. So there's a lot of honor in this position. And I think also, though, the way we approach them, right? I just want a conversation. I just want to know why you made that. It sounds funny the way I'm saying this. It can kind of get a ref on your side a little bit of just want to know what's going on, right? So respect brings back respect. If you scream at a ref, what do you think they're going to do? What do you expect them to do?
It's also your long-term view on this, and I don't think parents have that. And they probably don't need to because they're in and out of the game. But when you're in the game, right, and you're directing programs and you're overseeing multiple teams at multiple levels, or you're in a position of authority within the sport, you have to understand that the more you bring these officials into the funnel, if you want to keep the good ones, they've got to get through the gauntlet. And unfortunately, the ones that stick around are just the jackasses sometimes. You're like, of course this guy sticks around. He loves the controversy. They love the aggression. They like to be in control. They have no, they're somewhere along the line, they don't get that control, right? So when they're on the ice, they get to have that. But that doesn't help us as coaches and players as you go through. So the more, good people you could keep in the system. And I don't mean you got to coddle. Listen, officials when I used to ref, I used to love going through the bench, like, oh, ref, that was a horrible call. I go, you know what was a horrible call? You putting your first line out against that forechecking line because they just kicked your butt. That was a bad call. So I think the ability to have a discussion with coaches and understand that we're all like, listen, my son's lacrosse game tonight is canceled because there's no official.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've had the same situations here.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
And to me, if you're a parent that wants to see the sport survive, we need these, it's like, Sean, you probably see it now too, right? You walk in the rink and like, hey, who can do the clock today? It's like people just scatter for the exits. Like, I can't do it. Yeah. There's too much pressure.
My thumb hurts.
The thing is, like, if we want more people to help and more people to be involved, we have to understand we're in a collective here, and that people have to support everybody in that ecosystem. Officials, coaches, refs, timekeepers, the Zamboni driver. Like, if you're just going to, go off on everyone, we're not going to have sport left. And I think, I think if you're a parent and you're in it, you're just there with your kid in the, I guess I don't expect you to see that, But as people of authority and people that run these programs, we have to do a much better job of educating and reinforcing and supporting these good officials that want to be in the game, because we need them later on.
Right.
Exactly.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Mike, because we've also seen a shortage of referees here and games being canceled, or, a whole shifting of schedules because not enough refs are in our area, and there's a heavy recruitment drive now as well. So many parents want to shy away from it, not because they don't have the time, they just don't have the stamina to deal with all the negativity. And I mean, and that's on you, parents. That's you. So
and
you can change that.
I think as in the broader picture, we want our kids to love sports. We want our kids to love the things that we love, but we want to use sport to teach them lessons, right? To teach them life lessons, and one of the most important ones, in my opinion, if not the most important, is respect. And we don't do that when we get into the arena. Again, that logic that is lost on us, or maybe more so when the puck gets dropped. But we have to teach our kids respect and learning. It's okay to be emotional about a bad call. You can be angry with that. Right. You can also be angry when you have a bad shift, or when your teammate has a bad shift, your goalie lets in a bad goal. You can be angry and upset about all of those things. It's okay. But you can't turn around and be disrespectful to your teammates, to your coach, to the referee. You have to learn that respect, and you have to learn how to play the game, because it's only going to get more difficult as you get older. When mistakes are made, you're going to be held accountable more often, and you have to learn to be okay with that. So again, learn to be okay with referees making a tough call. Be mad about it. That's fine. The referees won't hold it against you. It's going to teach kids a good life lesson, I think. And that's something I think we need to focus on a bit more. I think largely, our kids aren't dumb. They pick things up. They understand things, and they understand when a coach is being hard on them, and they understand how that feels. If someone's being disrespectful to them, they may not be able to put words to it, but they understand the feeling. And we got to teach our kids to do better than that.
Yeah, Sean, I'm going to dive all over that, jump all on that, because I'll tell you a few things. You're talking about respect, and respect leads to accountability in this format, right? You said it, kids are not dumb, and you're right. When a kid sees their parent or their coach yelling at the refs and complaining to the refs and saying you ruined the game, you are teaching that kid that is the process.
Right.
And I'll give you a great example of, again, the bird's eye view. A lot of kids, when we're recording this, are in kind of the parity tournament time here in Pennsylvania, where they're putting them up against other teams. And I had a parent ask me, well, what are you watching for? What are you looking for? And my answer shocked them. I said, I'm looking to see how these kids deal with adversity, right? I'm not looking at lineups. I'm not looking at skill. I'm looking at, because the team's picked already, right? I'm looking at when they go down 2-0, or they're up 2-0 and they go down 3-2, how do they respond? Because at that age, I'm talking kind of the Pee-wee squirt level right now. Yeah. At that age, that's a skill set that coaches and parents should jointly be teaching, right? I want to see if they can come back from that situation or the bad call. I'm going to echo what I said earlier. Okay, it was a bad call. Now what? Okay, this kid didn't pass to you. Okay, agree with you. Now what? That is a skill set that both as individuals and teams will help your kids grow. Because as we all know, life is going to throw things at. There's no officiating in life, right? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people wish that, when you get in a car crash, a guy could come in with a whistle. Hey, you cut him off. That's 2 minutes. It doesn't work that way. You just got to deal with it, right? And I think it's a larger problem with society in general. But I love that you brought up the word respect, because respect leads to accountability. You have to respect the other person in the play. And again, there's that famous quote that whenever an official makes a call, half the people on the ice think that person's wrong. It doesn't matter. Half the people think they're wrong. So I think it's amazing that we even have the ability to look at these things. But I had to tap on that because that life lesson is so much more important than getting a Michigan or a wrist shot down or a glove hand or, waving your stick. Like, those are the things, especially at the young ages, that develop these young athletes into the type of person that can be productive and a player, right?
Yeah.
I'm rambling a bit here, but I wanted to ask you too, Sean, just about the situation room, because I'm looking at the time here.
Yeah.
We're talking about officials and calls, but your job actually entails a lot more than that. You had mentioned, one of your responsibilities is also points, right? And awarding or taking away points from other plays. I want you to talk about that. And are there other additional responsibilities in that situation room that we don't think about, that we don't know about?
Yeah. I guess let me speak to that last part first. Our group, as in general, we have there's a few guys more senior than me that have a wealth of NHL playing experience and some with experience in coaching and managing, as I said before. But part of our group's responsibility is looking at a bigger picture of the game. Like, are there tweaks to rules that we think would be good to implement into the game? And we'll take those recommendations if we feel that there is, and we gather video evidence of these things, and we will present them to the general managers in their meetings. So our boss, Colin Campbell, is responsible for putting those meetings on and coming up with the agenda for them, and we will put these things on the agenda to discuss. So we have a very heavy involvement in rule changes or rule interpretation changes. So that's obviously no small thing. That's a fairly important thing, and we're always trying to drive skill and reward skill and like. So we, as part of our nightly watching, we're looking for things like that. Mm-hmm. We're not always looking just to make change, but if we think something might benefit, and then we'll bring it to the managers. And if there's traction, it might move on to the competition committee and so on. And if there isn't, we just move on, right? So that's one thing, and then individuals within our group have different responsibilities. And some guys are on the protective equipment subcommittee and things like that. And one of my other responsibilities is kind of being the NHL's official scorer. So when a goal is scored, if there's a question as to who should get assists or who should get credit for the goal, if it was a deflection, something like that, our auditing process will flag that play. It'll come to me to review it within the situation room and all the technology that we have, and then make a decision. More often than not, it's like, we can't tell if this player got a touch on the puck and should be awarded with an assist, and then we'll go and look at it. The more difficult ones are determining whether a defensive player gained control of the puck enough to negate an assist. And those tend to be the ones that, you get the most pushback from the teams. The teams can request reviews of goals. So they'll send it to our stats department and they pass it on to me. And even the scorers in the building in real time can message and say, we're having a tough time determining this one. Can you take a look at it? And so
yeah, because player X is leaning over the glass saying, I got that assist. I need that for my bonus.
Yeah, exactly. And fortunately, like, we see it less because, again, there's so much video out there. It can be obvious, and yet we still get a lot of requests to review something that is pretty obvious. They're just hoping something sticks and they'll get a break and get it. But I'll get messages from the teams to review something, and you get messages from agents and the like, but we don't acknowledge those. If they want a review, we tell them, tell your player to go through the PR director and then we'll review it. So that can be contentious, especially in a world where betting is allowed and is I don't have to take that into account when making a decision. I'm very well insulated from that. but it's not like I just got an email last night, a pretty pointed email that I'm not very good at my job, from a random person. I don't know who it is.
I'm sorry for sending that, Sean. I should have cooled off before.
I think it was my son, because my son's question was, why is the league always against Sidney Crosby and the Penguins? I don't know, but that's just his.
Yeah, it's funny because then Flyer fans are always saying, "Why are you always?"
I'm sitting here right now going, "What are you talking about?" What are you?
Right. I love it.
Yeah, so that's one of the things, and then I'll also consult with we have a group of people working to automate a lot of our statistics. So like time on ice, as an example, is with the trackers and the players' jerseys. Now we can get a really good accurate picture of exactly how much time a player is on the ice, and you remove some of the human error. So anyway, and we're looking to automate a lot of statistics, missed shots, shots on goal, shot attempts, things like that. And so our stats analysts will consult with me. They'll say, we're creating definitions for play so that they can write code based off of that. So that when the AI system, over the course of the game, can appropriately assign things to a bucket. And zeroing in on those definitions can be really difficult. You have a lot of what you call edge cases, right? Where it's like, geez, this could go one way or the other. Like, how do we want the AI to like assign these things? And it's really, really difficult. And you're going to have those that can't be easily put into a bucket. So I do a lot of work with that group of people to say, to try to narrow that down. So there are fewer exceptions or fewer gray area ones that needs a human to go in and say, I'm going to put this over here. Right. So that's a really kind of fun, aspect of the job to work on. That wasn't initially something that was a responsibility of mine. Neither was the scoring. Our longtime chief statistician, Benny Ercolani, retired a number of years ago. And I was fortunate. I have a great relationship with Benny, and I was fortunate that when he retired, it was recommended that I take over that part of his responsibility. And so again, it wasn't like, actually none of my career even existed when I was a kid. So it's not something you could have dreamed to work towards. I
can't wait to do that. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So it's just an added responsibility that came when Benny retired. And it's like, I clearly never thought of doing something like that or adding that to my responsibilities, but that could be pretty fun, pretty cool. And I'm really happy to do that part of the job now. It's fun, again, not without its controversy and not without its downside, but you're often telling players things they don't want to hear. But that's the job. So.
Yeah, it is amazing how much this game has evolved and the minutia of how it evolves, right? Where I think other sports leagues have a hard time making changes. The NHL has always been very forthright in saying, look, we want to get this to the best it can be. And, Sean, I'll be honest with you, you and I are getting to an age now. We've seen many iterations of this game from, the 6'5", 220-pound 90 era to really speed and talent and skill today. So I wanted to ask you, kind of with the scope on, do you have any favorite rule changes or changes to the game that you've seen over your time there that you might, this has just made the game so much better? A few pop in my head, but I'd love, again, you're there, right? I'd love your thoughts on that.
Oh, that's a great question and a very difficult one.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I'm a big fan of anything that promotes skill, and I think as the foundation of a lot of the rule changes or the interpretation changes have been to reward offense and to reward skill.
Right.
However, we still understand and you want to reward players that are very good defensively.
Right.
You want to keep the hitting in the game, the clean hitting in the game. So I think one of the things that I love that we've done or endeavored to do is to protect our players from those big sort of blindside hits that we can all remember. Maybe, they have specific plays that were like maybe a lot of like I always think of Scott Stevens because he was
in my mind too.
just such an imposing player and so much fun to watch. Just so good and so tough. Like a lot of his hits wouldn't be okay today. And I don't mean to single him out, but just
there was plenty of players at that time.
Yeah. But I love that we're working consistently and continuously to protect players, but also still have that accountability that you can't come through the middle with your head down and expect not to get hit.
It's funny. I watched the game the other day where TJ Oshie actually was questioned about Panarin hitting him, and TJ Oshie said, "I knowing that he makes hits like that, he's like, I don't mind the hit. Like, I just thought it was a good hit." So when a player at least backs that up, when you have every Capital fan in the world going crazy that it was an illegal hit, and then it turns out it wasn't even a call. Like that's a good. Like it's great that the players are able to say, "Listen, I don't mind that hit. I like that hit."
Yeah, 100%. I love when players still have that perspective that, we see a lot of times now, and mind you, we're very close to in the room. Like we see everything, right? So we can sometimes overthink it and say, oh, there's a lot of players turning their backs to hits and expecting they're not going to get hit. We maybe just overemphasize it, like because you as a fan watching your team probably only see that a couple of times or a handful of times, and we're just so close to it, right? But I love when players today hold themselves accountable and say, I put myself in a bad spot there. That doesn't mean I liked getting hit. You don't have to say, like, oh, that was great, I'm so glad he did that. But you can that they can at least acknowledge, I put myself in a tough spot there. I got to do better the next time around. I love that accountability that they can show. But again, to answer your question, I think I love anything that sort of continues to promote that the skill that our players have, because I think it's what separates the NHL players from the non-NHL players. Like that they're able to do what they're able to do now at NHL speed is, I think, something that I marvel at every single night.
Yeah, me too.
And I watch, like you watch, like you get a little bit jaded when you're watching as much as I do. Like you just expect, because players do the right thing so often. They make the right smart play so often. So when you watch a preseason hockey game and you have players that are maybe not necessarily ready for the NHL yet, it's such a stark difference from preseason game to game 10 to game 50 of the season. Like these guys do things right all the time, and the speed at which they're able to do that as a function of maybe the rules in 04-05 when they changed from the
100%
hold era, the dead puck era, to what it is now, is like I marveled when I was a kid watching the NHL in that era, and maybe even more so now, because so I don't know if I could put say one specific rule, but it would be anything, I guess, that sort of promotes this.
No, Sean, I agree with you. I think the emphasis on the talent over the structure of a person has been a beautiful thing. The speed of the game is what makes the game beautiful. And, it's funny, when we were growing up, I encourage parents, especially that maybe parents who weren't really around the game, before 2005, to watch a game from 1993 or and just the amount you could hold someone or obstruct someone. Mike, I think Mike, you say this all the time. Every play would be a penalty today with today's rules.
Yeah,
it's a different.
Mario Lemieux would have had 300 goals. I mean, people would just lay on him.
Right, well, Mike. That's a great point. Like I watched just a little snippet of a clip yesterday. It was 20 seconds. I was like, there was 10 penalties in that 20-second period of time. And think about how many of our record holders, right, for whatever stat, are players from that era. You're like, what if they had an opportunity to play under these rules now, like, I don't know, there's no telling you, obviously, but what Steve Yzerman was able to do, he was my favorite player growing up, and what he was able to do in that era is like, man, I don't know if there was no space on that ice for someone like him, and he still made it happen.
Crazy.
No. There's a lot of lumberjacks at that time period, but
yeah.
Sean, I'm loving this. We could go for hours and hours here. I just want to thank you for being here. Thank you for what you're doing for the game, because I think you're giving our audience extreme perspective from multiple fronts. One is just obviously an officiating front, but two is how committed the NHL is to getting it right. And again, when you look at other sports, it's not close. I mean, it's not close. Like, I wish Major League Baseball would take the strike zone off the TV. I don't want to see it anymore, right? Yeah. And then the other thing too is the evolution of the game. The NHL is always trying to put a better product on the ice, and it's for the fans, right? People get lost in that. Well, they're doing this. They want this team to win. I can tell you this from my time there. Sean can tell you this. That is not true. There's no master script or master plan. You're committed to this, making this the best product it can possibly be.
I've never been sent an email, a memo, a text message, a phone call that said anything, any game, anything needs to go a certain way. Like it and if something like that ever happened, don't you think it would have got out somehow? Like,
yeah,
people don't keep that kind of thing quiet, right? But I do want to emphasize one other thing, and I think what separates us from our review process, I should say, from most other professional sports, and mind you, every professional league had come through our room,
right.
How we do what we do.
Collaboration there for sure.
We were the first to have centralized video review, so every major professional sports league has come to us to see the technology we use, the process that we have in place, and we're unique in that we're not officials. None of us were referees or linesmen. We all played hockey at different levels. Like I say, the guys more senior than me in our group played in the NHL and whatever. They had that experience. We all played the game, but we didn't officiate the game. We think it's important that we have that in place because we're not former referees looking to confirm our current referee's call. Like, we want to see it. We think we can see it more objectively as a result. And we're also not members of a team, so we're not looking at it from through the team's lens. We're looking at the play and the unique set of circumstances that consist of that play, and we're making a judgment based off of that. So every play is a snowflake, and people want to compare one play to the other. We see the nuance, and that's what we get paid to do. That's what our responsibility is, to make a decision on that play for that unique set of circumstances. I think, again, I just wanted to make that point. I think that's one of the things that separates us from the other sports leagues. I'm not just talking about North American. Like, we've had Aussie rules football and National Basketball League in Australia. We've had horse racing leagues come through. I mean, like, you name it, they've come through to see what we do. And it's about the process, and you can take that, within hockey, you could put it to basketball, you could put it to football, like any other sport. It's the process. And but again, that's what I think separates us, is I think we're still the only league that does it without it being officials. We have a retired official in the room with us as someone to give us some officiating experience and to give us their perspective. But ultimately, all those decisions are made by us. We have the final say, and we can overrule the referees. And I think that's what separates us from the other leagues.
It's checks and balances, right? I mean, it's incredible. Sean, I want to ask you too, just for the parents listening, the coaches listening. Again, it's all about youth hockey on this show, right? Any words of wisdom, any thoughts as the person that you are in your position for them when they go to their next kid's game?
Perspective. Remember what age your kids are, and I speak from my experience with a 9-year-old. Try to see the world through their eyes. They're kids still, and I want my kid to be a kid. I want them to learn to take things seriously and have that responsibility and accountability, but I can't teach them that in one day. It's a process. You build a base layer and you continue to layer on top of that every day. There's going to be steps back. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Some days, some months, it's 1 step forward and 2 steps back, and that's okay. It's all about perspective for me, and being objective and understanding that our kids are kids, and the likelihood that any one of our kids is the next Sidney Crosby, not very high. They could be. I won't say they're not, but they're probably not. And they're probably going to enjoy other things in life, and hockey is just one of those things. And so I want my kids to love the things that I love, but more importantly, I want them to love the things that they love. And if they go and have a bad game, a bad tryout, a bad practice, like, it's okay. We all have bad days at work. We have bad days in our life, and I don't want that to be held against me. So we shouldn't hold that against our kids as well. And for the kids, it's just fully enjoy what you're doing. Like, if it ever becomes a burden, if it ever becomes a drag, then maybe you look to do something else. Like, you're a kid, and allow yourself to be a kid. I was again at my son's tryout last night, and there was the group that was going on after them were a few years older, and the kids were playing volleyball to warm up, and it quickly devolved into just spiking the ball at each other, like trying to hit each other in the head. It was pretty funny. But I'm talking with another parent, and the balls come whizzing by our heads, and we're ducking, and it was a good reminder of, like, kids being kids and having zero awareness of anybody else around them. And it's okay.
Right.
Because I remember being that kid and playing and having that much fun and not having any awareness of any adults around me and the impact I might have on them. If it crosses a line, somebody would say something, right? But they were kids being kids, and there's nothing I love more than watching my kid be a kid. It's a special time in his life and in his hockey career, if he continues to have one. Being 9 years old, like, it's one of the last times you're going to be able to just be a kid playing a sport. It's starting to get more and more serious, and I don't want parents, especially at the U10, U11 age and below, getting too far ahead of themselves. I think that happens a little too much now.
I would agree. I think that's one of the reasons we have the audience that we have, who we appreciate very much, because I think they're looking for sage advice. And
I want to say too, like, in listening to a lot of your episodes, and I think it's so great that I think probably a lot of the listeners are people that want to do better. They're probably not the parents standing on the glass screaming and getting into fights and the like you listen to things like this, shows like this, and because you're wanting to be better as a parent for your kid. And so I applaud all what you guys do here and your listeners in listening to you, so that they can be better hockey parents and maybe parents in general. I think it's really special. So I'm really honored and happy to have been here with you today. Appreciate you having me here.
Thank you, Sean. That's a very nice compliment to us and the listeners. And we agree with you. We think that the dad screaming over the glass of the ref, probably not a big listener, probably not coming on here week to week, but they're always welcome. We're still waiting for that email to come in of, I am this fan and I hate your show because you're speaking logic.
Yeah.
It's coming. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I get that by the looks in the rink. That's how I know.
Yeah, no.
I roll like, oh, this guy.
You got to give him that stare down. Mike Christie, anything before I close this out?
No, Sean, thank you so much. You gave us such a neat, rare inside look into that situation room. It was what a treat for us. Thank you. And it's much more sophisticated and interesting than I even imagined it to be. So this was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're not a group of people just kicking our feet up to watch hockey. Like, we're involved a little bit more.
I just see it as the ultimate man cave. You're like, oh my God, there's TVs everywhere. Guys are
somebody bring out the blue.
Yeah. Well, we're in the process of building a brand new room that'll be open next season. It'll be even more special than the one we have.
Good. We want an invite. We want an invite.
Anytime you guys are in Toronto and you want to come take a look, reach out. I'd be happy to show you.
Told us that it's going to happen now.
Bring it to you live.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to know why the Michigan isn't called a high stick every time. That's what I want to know.
There you go.
Well, because it's kept below the height of the crossbar.
All right, well, let's see. I'm gonna start looking.
Like we all knew that. What are you talking about?
I could make a good argument about that.
That'll be on the next episode.
Hey, we've had a pretty good conversation about that. Not this, like 10 years ago, probably. Like it was like the what if this, because we knew that goal happened in college, right? You knew it. Like what happens when this happens? It wasn't if it happens in our game, it was when it happens.
Right.
And we had a really healthy conversation about it. And I don't think anything in our rules currently you could use to say it's illegal. But but there was a time where the spinorama was legal in a penalty shot or a shootout, and now it's not. So
Never say never, but
another conversation.
Remember, kids, practice more than that shot.
So cool.
We'll have to have you back on, Sean, but appreciate you being here greatly today. Again, if you have questions, you can send them to us. team@ourkidsplayhockey.com is the email. If you've got enough questions for Sean, I'm sure you all will. We'll do a second episode. But just please don't make it like, why in this game back in 1997? We're not going to discuss those on the air.
Don't bring up the Hasek, the St. Louis game.
No, we're not doing 99. We're not doing any of those things. We're moving forward.
In the crease rule,
right. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey, powered by NHL Sense Arena. Remember, you can see or listen to all of our episodes at ourkidsplayhockey.com. For Sean Ellis, Christy Cascio Burns, and Mike Benelli, I'm Lee Elias. We're going to see you on the next episode, people. Make sure you're enjoying the spring and the summer. Get outside and enjoy it, because we enjoy and we appreciate you. Skate on, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.